Hi everyone, this is William from the Headphone Experience, and I'm here tonight to tell you about the Kennerton Vali headphone. This is my review. I did a first impressions video about 6 weeks ago, and I've had a lot of time to listen to these, and I want to tell you what I think about them. First of all, I think they are a beautiful headphone. I think pretty much everything Kennerton makes is beautiful. The Odin, I think, is one of the best looking headphones made. The build quality is outstanding. The materials, there's not a piece of plastic on this that I'm aware of. The ear cups are made of Peruvian walnut. The yokes and clamps are all made of aircraft aluminum. The grills are made of a magnesium alloy, and the ear pads and the headband are all covered in real lambskin leather. I think you'd have to probably spend twice what these cost to get into those kinds of materials in other headphones. But anyway, they have a nice cable. The cable is about 7 feet long. Real nice quality. Has a 1/8 inch plug and comes with a 1/4 inch adapter. And at the headphone end, they are mini XLR 4-pin plugs, I think, which is probably the same as what Odyssey is using. Anyway, let's get into the headphone itself and the sound. The first thing that I noticed about these headphones is, first of all, they're very efficient. They're about 100 decibels at 1 milliwatt and only 32 ohms, so they're very easy to drive. I use these with several different amps, and it sounded good on anything, but they do scale well. The better the amp, the better they sound. So first, I guess I'll tell you what I used them with. I'm using a Cambridge Audio 540C CD player as a transport only. I'm sending a digital signal out of that to the Benchmark DAC 1, which I'm using as my DAC, and then from there to the Audio GD Master 9 amp. I've ran these through the headphone output of the Benchmark 1. They sounded really well. I had a Burson Fun headphone amp for a couple weeks, and it sounded even better out of that, I thought. And then when I hooked it up to the Audio GD Master 9, they just sound outstanding. So yeah, very easy to drive. It doesn't take much amp or much power, but they do sound better with a better amp. So they do scale well. Besides from efficiency, the second thing I noticed is they're very dynamic. There's a lot of punch in the mid bass, especially. Mid bass, upper bass, very dynamic, lots of impact. But besides from that, the bass on these I think is outstanding. It's the best bass I've ever heard out of a headphone. Not only does it have the impact, but the bass is detailed and textured, where when I first started using these, pretty much every thing I listened to, CDs I've been listening to for 20, 30 years, I heard new detail and new textures in the bass that I had never heard before. As far as the bass extension, they're not the last word on bass extension. They don't go super low. I don't have any way to measure these. I'm not set up for that yet. But I would say listening to them, they probably start rolling off below 50 hertz. And I'm not saying that the sub bass isn't there. It just drops off a little bit. So with so much impact and power in the mid bass, you don't really notice it. I would say out of I don't know, I put maybe 50 hours on these, and listen to just about every kind of music. And it's very, very rare that you ever notice that the sub bass rolls off a little bit, because the mid bass is so good. They just sound good all the time. I never noticed any lack in the bass at all. My Hi-Fi Man HE560s, which don't have anywhere near the bass, the mid bass impact or dynamics that these do have good bass extension, but it's only on maybe 5% of the songs I've listened to that you actually hear where they are going a little bit lower in the bass. But like I said, they don't have anywhere near the impact or the dynamics that these do. As far as the mid-range, very smooth but very detailed. I would say when you get up into the upper mid-range that the female vocals are set back just a little bit, not lacking at all. I would just say that they sound slightly more distant than some other headphones I've heard. The male vocals are pretty much right up front. Getting into the treble, very smooth, never fatiguing treble. I would say there's a good energy in the lower treble, probably in the range of like cymbals and all that. They really stand out, they jump out at you. Above that, I would say probably up in the 8 to 10,000 hertz range, that the treble probably rolls off a little bit. And like I said, it's not lacking. It just, there's a slight roll off, and unless you like a really bright headphone, it's probably going to be really good for you. I personally, maybe it's because my ears are 54 years old, I personally like headphones that are slightly bright. That's why I kind of like some of the Hi-Fi Man headphones that some people think are a little bit too bright. So if you think the Hi-Fi Man like the Sandara or HE560 are a little bit too bright, you're probably going to think the treble is perfect on these. It's just slightly down. I actually hooked up my Shit Loki and EQ'd these a little bit. And the bass, I didn't find any need to EQ the bass at all. I thought it was perfect the way it is. The treble, I bumped up maybe 2 decibels, just a very slight boost in the treble. And that doesn't mean that there's anything wrong with these headphones at all. That's just my personal taste. I just like headphones that are slightly brighter. So I actually preferred it with about 2, maybe 3 decibels of boost in the treble, but if you don't like bright headphones, you probably wouldn't need to do that at all. So I would say for most people, the tone balance on these is just about perfect. I can't think of any reason anybody would not be happy with the tone balance. I guess the best way I can describe the sound of these headphones is they're kind of like a premium ice cream. They're thick, they're rich, and they're creamy. That's how these sound to me. Pretty much the opposite of thin. If you've ever had a headphone that you think just sounds too thin, lacking in bass, lacking in dynamics, then this is probably the headphone for you, because this is just pretty much the opposite of a thin sounding headphone. Just like I said, thick, rich, and creamy is the way they sound to me. The imaging and the separation is very good in my opinion. The imaging is very distinct. You can locate every instrument, and the separation is very good. You never hear 2 instruments that sound like they're coming from the same location. Every instrument to me sounds like it's coming from a separate, distinct location. And all the way around my head, not really behind, but out front, up above, the Soundstage, what I guess I'm getting into, is really good on these. At first, when I first started listening to these, and I'm not sure that I believe in the idea of burn-in, a lot of people do, And I do think that headphones can make small changes in sound over time. And, or, maybe the other argument is it's just our brain adjusting to the new headphone. But anyway, at first it seemed that the Soundstage was not small, but not as large as some other headphones I've heard. The Hi-Fi Man Sundara and HE560 both have a very wide soundstage, and this sounded to be just a little bit smaller to me in soundstage width, but I swear over time the soundstage got wider on these. Now I can't tell the difference in the soundstage width compared to the Hi-Fi Mans, and I actually think these have better soundstage depth from front to back than the Hi-Fi Mans do. So I'm really impressed with the soundstage on these. Some songs I'll listen to, and the soundstage doesn't sound huge, but then I'll put something else on and I'll just hear something, from way out here that sounds like it's 6 or 8 inches from my ears. So I guess it's just kind of dependent on the music you're listening to. But like I said, excellent imaging, excellent separation, and not the biggest soundstage in the world, but very good. Not small at all. Basically, what I like about these headphones, and I would say over the past probably 3 weeks, I've probably done about 90% of my headphone listening with these headphones. I also have the Sundaras and the 560s behind me. I've got some Hi-Fi Man HE500s, and this has been my headphone of choice. These pretty much make everything sound good. I couldn't tell you how many CDs I put in that I've listened to literally hundreds or maybe thousands of times, and these just made it sound better than I've ever heard it before. I think the first one that I noticed was I was listening to New Order Substance from 1987, and I probably heard that CD 1,000 times, and it sounded better than I've ever heard it out of any headphone or speaker out of the Valley. And another one was 9 Inch Nails, Pretty Hate Machine. Just the detail and the textures in the bass, and it just blew me away. Once again, never heard that CD sounding that good. Someone else that sounds really good is Norah Jones. I swear that Kennerton must have used Norah Jones when designing and tuning these headphones, because Norah Jones just sounds absolutely perfect through these headphones. So I've listened to a pretty big variety of music, and just about everything I've listened to sounds great through these headphones. Is there anything I don't like about them? There's nothing I can really say that I don't. They have a few minor flaws. One is they're kind of heavy. According to my kitchen scale, these weighed in at about 532 grams, which put them about 8 grams under my Hi-Fi Man HE500s, which are quite heavy. But once they're on my head, they just don't feel that heavy. These are actually a very comfortable headphone, and I have had no problem listening to these for 2 or 3 hours at a time. I really like the way these headphones feel. I'm sure part of it is the ear pads are just so much better than what's on the Hi-Fi Mans. Thick, cushy, soft, and they just distribute the weight really well. I was going to point out earlier in the video, I did mention this in my first impressions video, that the adjustment system on these is a little unusual. What you have is a knob here that you loosen the knob, and then the yoke slides up and down in the clamp. So you adjust the height with it, and for me, right about the middle is ideal for me. But then also, the yoke swivels front to back. You can loosen it and get some swivel front to back and adjust your pressure from the front to the back. And I personally have a problem. It only happens on the right side. that when I wear headphones for quite a while, right at the joint of my jaw, if the headphone's putting too much pressure there, I can get some pain there, and I've actually had to stop listening because of that with different headphones. And being able to adjust these front to back, the rotation, I can take that pressure off, and I can probably wear these longer than any headphone I have. The Hi-Fi Man HE560 is almost 200 grams lighter than these, and probably the most comfortable headphone I've ever tried. And these, you do notice, are a little bit heavier, but they're almost on the same comfort level, and I can probably actually wear these longer. So the weight has never been an issue for me, I guess. I don't know, maybe I have kind of a thick neck and I can hold them up. If you're a small person and have a thin neck, maybe the weight will get to you, but it's never been a problem at all to me. Other than that, the only other thing is, and once again, this is just personal preference, I actually prefer headphones to be just a slightly brighter, up in the 8-10 kilohertz range. But once again, that's just, it could be my 54-year-old ears and just my personal opinion. I'm not saying there's anything wrong at all. The treble on these is very balanced and very detailed, and most likely it's not going to be a problem for most people. Unless you like an exceptionally bright headphone, that's not going to be an issue for you. So anyway, the one thing I want to mention is when I first got these, they're on loan to me from Kennerton. I requested them with just a single-ended cable on them because I didn't have the Audio GD Master 9 at that time. So that's the way I've been using them. I am trying to get a balanced cable for these, which I think could improve the sound even more. Not that I think that the balanced cables in their own are an advantage, but this amp is designed as a balanced amp, and with my Hi-Fi Man HE560s, I do get more detail out of it using a balanced cable. So I'm going to try these when I can with a balanced cable, and if it does make a big difference, I'll make another video and kind of an update on these and let you know if that does make a difference. Well, anyway, I'm going to wrap this up, and once again, this is William from the Headphone Experience. We're now one of the largest headphone groups on Facebook. If you would like to join us, we're a closed group, but you're all welcome to join. And if you like my video, please give me a thumbs up and subscribe to my YouTube channel. Thank you very much.